Today we're going to talk about 7 common mistakes that military families make when they're thinking of using their VA loan. And not only are these mistakes something that could cost you thousands of dollars, but it's also something that can lead to getting your offer rejected. So today I'm going to give you what are these mistakes, and I'm also going to cover who exactly qualifies for the VA and what exactly is the VA loan in general. So let's get into it. And for those of you that don't know me, my name is Alexa Peña. I'm a local real estate advisor. I have a team here in El Paso. I'm an investor, and I've helped dozens of clients PCS into El Paso and ensure that they get the best deal when they're using their VA loan. Now, I've also seen a ton of people that unfortunately have worked with other agents before working with us, and they've been taken advantage. They haven't really taken the time to explain what is the VA, how does it work, how does it benefit you. So in this video, my goal is to educate you with all of the pitfalls that you want to avoid to ensure that you get the best decision and the best outcome for you and your family. Now, before we get into how these mistakes come to be, I want to explain who qualifies for the VA loan. So it is going to be active military, anybody who's in the reserves, also surviving spouses of anybody that has been in the military, and also anybody who is active service coming straight off of boot camp. As long as it's been over 90 days, you also might qualify. But again, as we continue in the video, I will give you some tips for those of you that are still trying to see if maybe you fall under any of these categories to qualify. I will be sure to point to some resources down below to ensure that I guide you in that as well. Now, what is the VA loan? For simpler terms, it is going to be backed by the Veterans Affairs Organization. And what this essentially means for you is that you get to benefit from the overall down payment assistance. Now, I want to be very clear because I see this be one of the common mistakes that most people tell their clients whenever they're helping them, which is you don't have to pay for the down payment. That is the first mistake that you do not want to fall privy to, because although you're not going to pay for the down payment up front, it is still going to be something that is going to get rolled into your overall loan. However, as you will see in the video, it saves you a ton of money. If you're looking to buy a property for $500,000, typically if you're having to come in with the 3.5% down, you're already paying over $12,000 for that property. However, if you're doing something with your VA, that actually has the option to now roll it into the overall price of the loan, which is going to help you not come with as much cash to the closing table. Which leads to my first mistake that most VA buyers make when they're thinking of using their VA loan. A lot of VA buyers don't take the time to actually speak with a licensed professional in the mortgage industry. And I'm going to share with you some examples that have happened with some of our clients. They tend to just go with the first bank that has either their bank account information already or that they've purchased a car with in the past, and they don't compare all of their options. I've seen it happen time and time again, and I'm not going to give you any names, but if we have a conversation, I definitely will give you my opinion in person. But essentially, I've seen a lot of people that go with the first bank, they don't compare lenders, and what happens is that they roll in a ton of hidden fees. This is why when you're comparing, I always recommend 3 lenders. This way you make sure that they're really giving you the best deal. Think about it. If I come to you and I give you a loan estimate and that's the only loan estimate that you have, how can you really see and discern if it's the best deal for you? However, if you have 3 lenders coming to you and giving you a loan estimate, now you can compare. And I've seen some lenders that add all these miscellaneous fees. Some of them will add things that don't even make sense sometimes. Like, you're already processing the documents, but yet you have like 10 other processing document fees that you're charging me for. What in the world is going on? And this is why you want to make sure that you really are comparing every single one of your options to ensure that they're really putting their best foot forward. Now, myth number 2 is assuming that you are not able to cover your closing cost. This is why it's important for you to really understand what is in your best interest? I've had a lot of clients that tell me, Alexa, I'm trying to do something with my VA loan because I want to make sure that I start growing my portfolio. I've heard a little bit about house hacking and I want to know more about it, which I'll share with you guys in this video as well, just so that you're aware of it. But they'll tell me things such as, I want to start growing my portfolio. However, a lot of them, because they've seen some videos online or they've talked to some of their buddies, if they're not using their VA loan and they're comparing things such as their closing cost, and let's say they had an agent that didn't really explain how they can make sure that they don't have to pay their closing cost, what they'll tell me is, I want to buy, but I don't have money in the bank account right now that I could use toward my closing cost. And this is where this is a myth. You don't actually have to worry about any closing cost when you are able to negotiate these with a seller. This is where, when you speak to your licensed professional, when you speak to the agent that you have desired to protect you and your interest, they should explain to you, hey, okay, what is your game plan? Okay, if you're looking for a property that is going to give you the best result in terms of what you're going to come to the table paying, then let me find you some properties that are going to fit those needs. And this is where the strategy with your agent is so important. Although I hear a lot of people sometimes say, just go with the lender directly and you don't have to talk with your realtor. I beg to differ, and yes, I'm biased, of course, I'm licensed, but even further than that, I say this because as professionals that are in the industry, we have to have points of contacts that we can share with you. So I have a carpet cleaner, I have a cleaning lady, I have a roofer. I have these things in my contact book because I've made it a priority to work with these people, and the people that don't deliver, we fire them. We stop working with them and we don't, recommend any of our clients with them ever again. It's the same thing when it comes to a lender. We've had to fire so many lenders in our journey. I've been licensed since I was 21 years old, and I am telling you, it has been a roller coaster, to say the least. And when we've had certain lenders that at the beginning sounded like they were going to deliver, we've come to find out through the transaction that maybe they dropped the ball, maybe they didn't communicate in the way that they were supposed to. This is where the trial and error tribulations of our journey start for us. And I say this to you because it's important, right? If you're working with just one lender that you found online, but you really haven't worked with them, how can you really discern if that lender is who they say they are? So us as realtors, we have to have some people in our contact database so that we can share with you and we can let you know, hey, we've worked with this lender. I'm not just gonna recommend one lender. I want us to compare with these 3 lenders. And I will tell my lender, hey, we are going to be comparing with other lenders to ensure that we are getting the best deal. And this also helps them perk their ears up and actually be mindful of what it is that they're going to include in those estimates, because I've seen it happen where we send a lender estimate and then we compare it with another lender, and then that lender is like, send me the loan estimate so that I can see what I can do. So that just gives you a little bit more feedback of how this world is ran. And again, some of you might be saying like, that's not fair. Why don't they just give you the best deal possible from the beginning? I'm with you, but at the end of the day, it's all about their business, and this is why you need somebody that is going to protect you and ensure that we know what's going on so that we can advise you in the best way possible. Myth number 3 is that VA loans are harder to get accepted. And this happened to us during COVID especially. That is something that happened. A lot of sellers, because they were working with agents that were not educated as military professionals that were experts in this field, they were telling their clients, oh, don't accept the VA loan, they're harder to get approved. This is why working with professionals that are something geared around like the MRP, like I'm part of the military relocation program, which is basically where we take additional training to ensure that we know how to navigate these types of deals. But there's a lot of agents that don't take the time. They don't even know what a VA funding fee is, which I'll get to in a second. They don't know how to structure the deal, and they end up costing you a lot of money. It was happening in COVID. A lot of agents were telling their clients, do not accept a VA loan. It's not worth it. And the reason why they were doing that is because they thought it was going to take more steps in order for that loan to get approved, but that's not actually the case. So this is why you having somebody in your corner that can explain and relate how well qualified you are and structure the deal in the best way that is going to benefit you will save you a ton of time, a ton of money, and at the end of the day, get you to the desired outcome that you want, which is owning your home. Mistake number 4 is skipping your inspection simply because it passed the appraisal. Oh my goodness, I've seen this happen so much, and this is why, again, you want to make sure that you're talking with somebody that you trust, somebody that's in your corner. I had a client that they had purchased a home before, and that was not through us, but they told me, hey Alexa, I already, got the VA appraisal back, so I'm good, right? I don't need to do an inspection. I told him, I was like, do you remember when we had the consultation, I mentioned to you that there was an inspection and then a VA appraisal, or in this case, just an appraiser that was gonna go out? He was like, yeah, I remember. I just thought that they were the same because that's what happened when I sold my house in Florida. So unfortunately, the agent that was representing him was also the listing agent, okay? So if you know anything about this, whenever you have dual representation, what can happen is if you don't have an agent that is being clear with you and genuinely trying to make sure that he's putting the best or she's putting the best interest of all parties involved, they're typically going to side with their seller because they have an agreement with their seller to sell the property. So that's exactly what happened in this case. They had an agreement with the seller. The agent that was representing my buyer at this time essentially went ahead and told them, like, there's no need for you to do an inspection as long as we do the appraisal and everything comes back good, we're fine. That's not true, okay? So I explained to him, I was like, actually, that was a disservice to you because if you did the inspection, you would have found a list of things that were maybe wrong with the property that maybe would have deterred you from actually moving forward and purchasing this property. This is why you want to understand the difference. An inspection is when the inspector goes out to the property, checks the home, make sure that they're looking at, they can even do an inspection like geared around the sewer system, the foundation, the roof, the plumbing, the HVAC, all of these important things that cost you a ton of money. So at the end of the day, do not confuse that an inspection is the same as an appraisal. An appraisal is when the bank, in this case, whoever you're going to do your lending with, let's say we already decided on Mortgage Banker 2, then Mortgage Banker 2 is going to ask you for all of your documents, and from there, they're going to send an appraiser that is representing the bank. And the easiest way to understand what the appraiser does is they're there to protect the interest of the bank and ensure that whatever it is they're going to loan you is actually the value of the home. So let's say you're asking me for $500,000. I'm not going to lend you the $500,000 unless I send an appraiser and they confirm indeed the home is worth $500,000. And this is how you can differentiate between the two of them. Always do an inspection. It doesn't matter if the appraisal comes back at value. Always, always, always make sure you do that inspection. And another little bonus I'll throw in for you, make sure you do it during the option period. In some states, this is something that is called different terms. Just make sure that you have your due diligence period, which is essentially where you're telling your agent, I want to make sure that I have the ability to back out of this contract within set amount of time so that I can do my research on the home, that I can do my inspections on the home, make sure everything is good. And if there's some stuff that comes back from that I can negotiate with the seller. And I'm telling you, there's a lot of agents that don't tell you about this inspection period, and that is wrong because essentially it's costing you money. So if you decide to back out after you do your inspection and it's already past the option period, in this case the due diligence period, what happens is that you just lost your earnest money. And in some very dramatic situations, if the price point is high enough, I am telling you, you can get sued for specific performance. So definitely not a rabbit hole you want to go with. And again, make sure that you're asking your agent about this. And if you have a good agent, they should already be telling you about this from the beginning. You shouldn't even have to ask them about the option period. They should already be educating you about it. Now, mistake number 5 is that most people believe you need to have the perfect credit. That is also not true. I've seen a ton of files that have gotten rejected with a bank such as Veterans United, where they need like a 620 and above. And then they come to me and they say, hey Alexa, I found you on YouTube. I'm interested in buying a house. I tried to do an application with Veterans United. They didn't get me approved. They said my credit is too low. This is why, again, we have our pool of trusted lenders. And I am going to tell you, I've had some lenders actually qualify our VA clients for as low as 500 in their credit score, which is a big deal. So if you think about that, if you have somebody over here on this side telling you, no, you don't qualify, but you have some options, it is definitely in your best interest. So you don't have to believe that just having a good credit is what's going to allow you to get that approval. Because I know some of you might be thinking like, well, the interest rate is going to be higher, and why would, I want to buy a home if my credit is that low? Maybe I should just wait to rebuild it. That, again, to each their own. You're going to have your own perspective. I'm going to share with you what has actually helped my clients. And the way that they see it is, okay, I could sit here and wait to continue to build my credit and then buy a home 2 years down the road. I already lost on that equity that I could have built. Even if the interest rate is slightly higher, which I've seen it not actually different, it's not that different from the interest rate from some of our higher credit scores, like in the 580s and above. But what happens is that they see it from the perspective of, I get to continue to work on my credit for these next 2 years, and then eventually I can refinance, and then from there I get to drop already my monthly payment significantly because I built my credit, I got a lower interest rate, and on top of that I owe less because I've been paying this mortgage for the past 2 years. So definitely, again, it's not a one size fits all. It is based on your situation, but this is where you just want to be very transparent and also understand the fact that it does not mean that you can't qualify if your credit maybe isn't ideally where you would like to. And another little add-on to this is, think about it. There's a lot of people, I've heard it, PCSing, that sometimes they're overseas and the payment didn't go through on something that they needed to pay. They were out on the field, it wasn't made on time. That's not on you, and there's a lot of letters of explanation that we can send to the bank on your behalf. Again, it all comes down to the resources that you have. Having your trusted agents on your side is definitely going to impact you in a positive way. Myth number 6 is that a lot of people don't realize that you can use your VA loan on multiple situations. Yes. So I have a client actually right now. She's going to be relocating to Colorado. We already have an agent that's going to help her buy over there, and she's selling her house here in El Paso. So essentially at the beginning she was like, oh, but this means that I can't buy another house over there yet because I still have my house over here that I need to sell. I told her, I was like, no, you don't have to worry about that because you are going to be outside of the mile radius within what the parameters of the VA checking to see if you qualify for using your VA loan again would be checking. So because it's going to be so far, this is going to actually still allow you to get qualified under a second home as your VA loan. Again, comparing everything is so important, but you are 100% able to use it multiple times. So don't get, discouraged thinking, oh, I already used it one time. No. And it's kind of like the FHA financing. I have a lot of people that are also first-time home buyers, and they'll tell me, Alexa, I bought a home, and it was with my ex, and I don't think I qualify anymore for my FHA financing. That is not the case. You can qualify for it. It's the same terminology. It just really depends on the situation. So make sure that you talk to your lender about this so that they can explain to you in detail if that would be applicable for you. And mistake number 7, and I kind of sprinkled it at the beginning, but it's not working with the right VA lender. And of course, the VA realtor that specializes in military relocation or military acquisition. Why that's so important is because, again, if they don't know the ins and outs, they don't know what's going on, they are going to cost you the deal. I'm going to explain also some of the fees that you want to be aware of when you're using your VA eligibility. So a couple things here. They're going to check your COE, which is your certificate of eligibility. Now you can go online and search this. I don't recommend you do that. It's easy for a lender to just pull it out, go ahead and get all this information for you. But again, if you want to do that, I'll link the resources down below. But again, our lenders essentially run your information and they get your COE so that we can verify if you would qualify under the 3 criteria that I mentioned at the beginning of this video, so that you can see, okay, yes, 100% I can qualify for my VA. Now let's move into the second phase, the VA funding fee. And I'm going to add some screen shares here so that you can go ahead and see how the numbers work. But I'm going to use a simple example. Let's just say you're buying a home for $500,000. Typically on that amount, even though you don't have a down payment, it's going to be rolled into the loan like we explained. They still are calculating how much that down payment is. So let's just say it's about 2.5%. Based off that amount that you're rolling into the loan, they're going to assess a funding fee. In this example, it would roughly be about $11,500. Now, in this case, it is going to depend on the type of property you buy, which is why speaking with your lender is going to be game changer. They can give you exact numbers. I'm just giving you an estimate so that you keep this in mind when you start shopping. And some of you, I know you might be thinking, what's the benefit of using the VA then if I'm still gonna have to pay money? The cool thing about you guys that you get to really benefit from is that not only do you have the option to pay it up front, so if that's like, no, I really don't wanna do that, you can roll it into your monthly payment as well. And I've seen a client that actually rolled it into a house that they were buying for $500,000. So their monthly payment increased about $78. That's a pretty good deal if you think about it. Again, to each their own, you have options here. But the second thing that I like is that the VA fee goes into the Veteran Affairs funding program so that they're able to continue to support military veterans, everybody that has served and is a hero in our book, to continue to benefit from the down payment assistance. So this is something that really helps because, again, not everybody has the ability to just fork over $11,000, right, when it comes to buying a home. And if you're in that situation, but you're like, Alexa, I want to start building my wealth, I want to start investing in real estate, this is how the program keeps working for other clients. So it's definitely a win-win when you think about it from that perspective. Now, one of the last things I want to go over with you is house hacking. I've seen this talked about a lot in investment communities, and I definitely think that it's great, especially if you're in this journey of becoming an investor for the first time. Even though you might not realize it, the moment that you buy your first property, you just became an investor in real estate. So congratulations. And if you think about it from the perspective of house hacking, what you can do with your VA loan is that you can actually purchase up to a 4-unit complex. So meaning a multi-unit. And what that actually does is, let's say one of the units is for you, you're now living in that unit, you can rent the other 3 units that you would have. This is really great because now not only are you building equity on this property, but you're also receiving cash flow from the other tenants. Now, again, like I mentioned at the beginning, it really depends on what your monthly payment is going to look like, what is going to be profitable for you. But for example, in my market right now in 2025, as I'm recording this video, we have a ton of duplexes that are available and sellers that are selling their duplexes because they're looking to get into a bigger project. I get this question a lot. People will ask me like, why do sellers sell them if they're such a great investment? Think about it, it's leverage, right? So if you've acquired one property and now you want to use it as leverage to get into the next type of property that is going to help you get higher returns, sometimes you need to sell one of your assets to now go ahead and pour it into the new one. So that's just something for you to keep in mind. But we have a ton of inventory that is geared around this criteria. So we have had very, very happy clients that have been able to not only negotiate some great deals, but also some price reduction. So again, this is why you want to make sure that you're talking with your military expert that is going to really give you the ins and outs to ensure that it is going to make sense for you, because maybe it's not going to cash flow what you would like, or maybe it's not going to cash flow at all, but it's making enough of the money that you need to make your monthly payment. And maybe now you're just paying $300 on the side versus you having to go and rent and you're having to fork over all that money that is pretty much going down the drain, right? When we rent, that's never money that's coming back to us. It's gone. I rented for many years back when I was younger, and I know that that was always one of my biggest things that I would struggle with. I was like, man, I'm making the landlord all this money and I'm not making any money. So when I bought my first house, fun little story here for you guys, I bought it back in 2016, and that same home that I purchased for $157,000 back then, 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, over 1,500 square feet, is now worth over $300,000. So it just gives you a perspective of how this can actually benefit you. And now that same property is actually my very first Airbnb that I started. So again, getting started in the investment world doesn't have to be as hard as most people make it seem. It's just about getting equipped with the right people, comparing all of your options, making sure you have somebody that's in your corner so that you can make an educated decision. With that being said, I hope you found this video helpful. I will link down below some of the resources that I mentioned, and I do have a PDF for you guys to recap the 7 mistakes that most military buyers make when purchasing, or PCSing and purchasing, same thing, right? And if you do have any questions, please feel free to let us know. I will leave down below all of my handles. This way you can follow us on Instagram. I post daily. I give you guys as much value as I possibly can. And with that being said, thank you so much for your time today, and I will talk to you guys on the next one.